The crowd froze as Naomi Brooks squeezed the trigger one last time. The bullet flew like lightning, clean, silent, unstoppable, before striking dead center and lighting up the scoreboard. In that breathless moment, the girl they had all laughed at just shattered the state record, and the entire range stood in stunned silence, realizing they had just witnessed history. Everyone at the shooting range turned when Naomi Brooks stepped onto the dirt. She wore old, dusty jeans with frayed hems, work boots caked in dried Georgia mud, and a faded flannel jacket that once belonged to her grandfather. The jacket hung loose over her shoulders, worn thin in places, and stitched along the elbow with mismatched thread. In her hands, she carried an antique hunting rifle, wooden stock polished with time, barrel aged with stories. The sun beat down mercilessly over the Alabama hills as murmurs rippled through the polished crowd. Designer sunglasses were pushed down noses, heads tilted. No one had seen her before. No team, no coach, no sponsor name stitched to her back. Just a young black woman with dark, focused eyes and quiet fire beneath her silence. Some chuckled behind cupped palms. Others whispered in cruel amusement. One voice, louder than the rest, called out with smug amusement, "Somebody lose their farmhand?" Laughter followed like a cheap echo. That voice belonged to Caleb Preston, 27, cocky, confident, and undefeated. His shooting jacket was spotless, and his gear looked military issue. He leaned against a wooden post like he owned the air around him, flanked by teammates and local fans. Naomi heard him. She heard them all. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she looked toward the registration table, adjusted her grip on the rifle, and stepped forward. Her boots sank slightly into the dry, cracked ground as she approached the older man with the clipboard. He barely looked up. "This ain't a beginner's course, sweetheart," he muttered. "You sure you're in the right place?" Naomi met his eyes evenly. "I am." The man sighed, scribbled something down, and handed her a number tag. "Good luck," he added, in a tone that suggested she'd need more than that. Naomi nodded and turned toward the bench near the edge of the range, away from the laughter and side eyes. She sat quietly, the rifle resting across her lap like something sacred. Her fingers brushed the carved initials on the side of the stock, J.B., James Brooks, her grandfather. A decorated Army sharpshooter who taught her more with a few quiet afternoons in the woods than most books ever could. She could still hear his voice sometimes. "Steady hands, baby girl. The bullet only goes where your heart tells it to." The crowd applauded as Caleb's name was called. He stepped up like a man stepping onto a stage. He gave a mock salute, blew a kiss to someone in the front row, and fired a perfect sequence of shots. The scoreboard lit up in red and gold. His fans cheered. Reporters scribbled. Cameras flashed. Caleb grinned like a movie star. The announcer's voice boomed across the speakers. "Next up, Naomi Brooks." For a moment, silence. Then a few whispers. Confused glances. The farm girl was really competing? Naomi stood. She walked toward the firing line. The rifle rested confidently in her arms. The sun glared down, the air thick and dry, and yet her hands were steady. She stepped up to the line. Every eye followed her. Not with admiration. Not yet. But with doubt. Curiosity. Skepticism sharpened into cruelty. Caleb leaned to one of his friends and whispered, "Watch her miss the target completely." Naomi heard that too. But she closed her eyes. For a second, the range disappeared. She was back in her grandfather's pasture. Back behind the old wooden fence. Tin cans on posts. Cicadas humming in the heat. Her grandfather beside her, patient and sure. "It's not the gun, Naomi," he used to say. "It's the rhythm in your breath." She opened her eyes. Lifted the rifle. The world slowed to a hum. She exhaled. Pulled the trigger. A single shot rang out, sharp, crisp, clean. The range went dead silent. No cheers. No whispers. Just the scoreboard flickering. Then flashing. A number appeared. Then another. Then a name. Naomi Brooks. New state record. The crowd gasped. Caleb's smile faltered. His friend squinted. The announcer stammered something but couldn't find his voice. Naomi didn't celebrate. She didn't grin. She simply lowered the rifle and stepped away from the line with the same quiet grace she had walked in with. But now, the air around her had changed. There was weight to it. Eyes followed her differently now, not with dismissal, but with disbelief. She wasn't a joke. She was a revelation. A storm they hadn't seen coming. Caleb pushed off the post, jaw tight. He marched toward the officials, demanding the equipment be recalibrated. That score can't be right, he barked. That system's been off before. But after minutes of frantic double-checking and recalculating, the result stood firm. Naomi had shattered his record. One of the judges, looking pale, stepped back and nodded. It's real. Someone from the crowd shouted, rematch. Others took up the cry. Let them go head-to-head. Caleb, still fuming but too proud to refuse, turned toward Naomi. 3 shots. You and me. 1 round. You in? Naomi didn't blink. She gave a quiet nod. Yes. The announcer, now recovering his voice, stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a sudden death showdown, Naomi Brooks versus Caleb Preston. The crowd roared. Phones were lifted. Reporters scrambled. Caleb smirked as he strutted toward the line. But Naomi stood still, her eyes on the target ahead, her hands wrapped around the rifle like it was part of her. In her mind, she heard her grandfather again. Let the wind blow. Let the world scream. You just listen to your own heartbeat. The air grew still. The noise faded. And Naomi prepared to fire again. The silence that followed Naomi's shot still hung in the air like a held breath when the announcer's voice cracked through the speaker, barely louder than a whisper, new state record. Naomi Brooks. The crowd erupted into chaos, voices overlapping, phones raised, gasps turning into shouts as the scoreboard confirmed what no one could believe. Naomi, the quiet girl in mud-caked boots and a flannel jacket, had just obliterated a record that had stood for 6 years. At the edge of the range, Caleb Preston's expression twisted from arrogance into something unreadable. His jaw clenched. He shoved past 2 stunned officials and strode toward the line, his voice loud and sharp. I want a rematch. Right now. Head to head. The crowd, electrified, roared in agreement. This was no longer just a shooting competition. This was war. Naomi stood a few paces away, calm and still. Her rifle rested lightly in her arms, but her gaze was locked on the distant target, not on the man yelling her name. An official approached her, slightly breathless. Miss Brooks, the challenge is yours to accept. Naomi met his eyes with quiet resolve. I accept. And with that, the terms were set, 3 shots each, alternating turns. Highest total score wins. No do-overs. No excuses. As the crowd surged closer to the barrier lines, the announcer's voice thundered, Ladies and gentlemen, the sudden death shootout begins now, Naomi Brooks versus Caleb Preston. Naomi was called to shoot first. She stepped forward, not rushing, each footstep deliberate on the packed earth. Her rifle gleamed in the sun like something holy. The wind rustled across the range, catching a few strands of her tightly coiled hair beneath her cap. But Naomi didn't flinch. She closed her eyes for a moment and let herself return, not to the competition, but to the fields behind her grandfather's house. The faded porch swing creaking in the background. The scent of pine. His calm voice in her memory, You don't shoot for applause. Baby girl. You shoot for truth. You shoot to remember who you are. She exhaled, raised the rifle, and pulled the trigger. The crack echoed across the range. The bullet struck dead center, bullseye. A clean, perfect shot. The crowd gasped. Naomi stepped back silently. Caleb laughed loudly, too loudly. Got lucky. Let's see if she can keep it up. But as he took his position, a flicker of doubt crept into his eyes. He raised his rifle, paused, fired. His shot hit the target, but just shy of the center. A few murmurs rolled through the stands. Naomi didn't react. She simply stepped forward for her second shot. Another breath, another memory, another release. Bullseye. 2 for 2. Caleb's jaw twitched. His second shot landed closer, nearly touching the center, but still not quite there. He tried to play it off with a grin, but the sweat creeping down his temple betrayed him. Naomi took her final shot. It was smooth, unhurried, and so quiet in its precision that the moment the target lit up with a third bullseye, the entire range held their breath. Then the cheers came. Wild, unrestrained, thunderous. Naomi had delivered a perfect round. Caleb's turn. 1 shot left. He needed a miracle. He squared his shoulders, forced a grin, and took aim. But his hand was trembling. He squeezed the trigger. The bullet landed off-center, far enough that the crowd knew it before the scoreboard confirmed it. It was over. The numbers glowed bright across the digital display. Naomi Brooks, 300. Caleb Preston, 262. The announcer cleared his throat. Your new champion, Naomi Brooks. The field exploded into applause. Reporters surged forward. Photographers jostled for position. And at the center of it all stood Naomi, still not smiling, still not speaking, her rifle resting against her shoulder like a trusted friend. Caleb stepped away from the firing line, shoulders slumped, face flushed. His entourage tried to look busy, backing away slowly like leaves caught in the wind. From across the crowd, a stern man in a tailored suit, Caleb's father, watched with thinly veiled disgust before turning his back and walking away without a word. Meanwhile, the reporters surrounded Naomi like a wave crashing ashore. Naomi, who taught you to shoot like that? Are you going pro? How does it feel to beat the undefeated champion? Naomi blinked at the flashes, her body still humming with adrenaline. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Then a voice spoke, low, even, authoritative, from behind the reporters. Step back. Let her breathe. The crowd parted slightly as a tall man in a dark green marine jacket approached. He had sharp eyes, sun-creased skin, and a badge clipped to his collar. Name's Major Isaiah Langston, he said, offering his hand. You ever considered competitive shooting at the national level? Naomi hesitated. I haven't thought about it. Langston smiled faintly. Well, you should. Because you didn't just win a medal today. You sent a message. And I'd like to offer you a slot in my training program. It's not for beginners. It's for the best of the best. And I think you've just proven where you belong. Naomi didn't answer right away. She felt her father's presence behind her, even though he wasn't there. Felt her grandfather's spirit in the wood of the rifle. She looked past the crowd, past the noise, to the distant horizon. I'll think about it, she said softly. Langston nodded once. You've got 24 hours. Before he walked away, he pressed a business card into her palm. And just like that, the man vanished into the crowd as if he'd never been there. Naomi stood at the edge of the range as the last sunlight painted the sky in crimson and gold. She had come here with nothing but an old rifle and a memory. She was leaving with everything changed. The night after her historic win, Naomi Brooks sat on the porch of her family's farmhouse, the moonlight casting silver across the quiet Georgia fields. Her fingers traced the edge of the business card Major Langston had handed her, no logo, no title, just a name, a number, and a set of coordinates scribbled in clean black ink. The applause from the range still echoed in her ears, but louder than that was the memory of her father's voice as he pulled her into a proud embrace after the match. Whatever you decide, I'm already proud of you, he had whispered. She hadn't replied then. She just held on. Now, with dawn slowly pushing against the night sky, she rose without a word, packed the old hunting rifle into its worn canvas case, slid the card into her back pocket, and climbed into the family's aging Ford pickup. The drive stretched long and solitary, cutting through pine woods, sleepy towns, and winding mountain roads. The deeper Naomi went, the more civilization seemed to fade behind her. When she reached the coordinates, she didn't find a building with a sign or a welcome desk. Instead, there was a steel gate, a camera, and a silent man in uniform who checked her ID and waved her through without a word. Past the gate, the facility revealed itself in pieces, low concrete structures nestled into the hills, camouflaged with trees and brush, built for function, not form. As Naomi parked, a woman in tactical gear met her at the gravel lot and handed her a duffel bag. Room C17. Be ready in 15. That was all. Inside, the walls were cement gray, the hallways narrow, fluorescent lights buzzing faintly above. Naomi found her room, changed into the gear provided, black cargo pants, a tight thermal top, military boots. Everything fit snugly, like it had already been tailored for her. When she stepped outside again, she was no longer Naomi the girl from Georgia. She was Candidate Brooks. The first test came at sunrise. 50 recruits stood in formation in the gravel. Yard, shoulder to shoulder, eyes scanning one another. Some wore smug grins. Others looked nervous. Naomi stood still, silent. Major Langston emerged from a doorway with a clipboard and an expression like carved stone. "You were invited here because someone thinks you have what it takes," he said, his voice cutting across the wind. "That someone isn't me. I don't care where you came from. All I care about is who's left standing at the end." What followed were 12 hours of relentless drills. Obstacle courses through mud and water. Rappelling down cliff faces. Firing tests at moving targets under timed pressure. Mental exams designed to break focus, flashing lights, sirens, barking voices demanding logic puzzles and spatial reasoning in split seconds. Candidates dropped like flies. Some collapsed from exhaustion. Others cracked under the stress. Naomi's body ached, but her mind never wavered. She remembered what her grandfather taught her: pain passes, pride stays. By nightfall, only 5 candidates remained. Their names were called one by one. Naomi's was last. She stepped forward, sweat-soaked, dust-covered, boots nearly falling apart. Major Langston nodded once. "You've earned your place." Each of the 5 was handed a cloth patch, black with a silver insignia, an eagle clutching a lightning bolt. Naomi pressed it into her palm, the threads rough against her skin, the weight of it heavier than any metal. But just as the group turned to head back, Langston lifted a hand. "Not done yet," he said. "You're going to the next level." A black SUV rolled up without headlights. Naomi climbed in without hesitation. They drove in silence for over an hour, winding higher into the mountains. The sky had gone starless. The air felt colder. The facility they reached wasn't on any map. High stone walls surrounded a massive estate, with security cameras tucked under every eave and guards stationed at each entry point. The front doors opened as the SUV pulled in. Naomi stepped out, her legs stiff, her heart pounding for reasons she didn't fully understand. Inside, the estate was dark wood and steel, like an old hunting lodge had merged with a bunker. And waiting by the stone fireplace was Caleb Preston. His arms were crossed. His boots scuffed. But the swagger was gone. He didn't speak. Just nodded once. Naomi's eyes narrowed. "You again?" Caleb smirked faintly. "Guess they think I'm worth saving." Langston appeared behind them. "You two are not here to compete. You're here to survive. What happens next will test everything you think you know about yourself." Then the lights went out. Total black. And a voice, mechanical, unfamiliar, stripped of all warmth, echoed from unseen speakers. "Welcome to the final phase. Let's see what you're really made of." A door slid open behind them, revealing a dark tunnel lit by emergency red lights. Langston said nothing. Caleb looked at Naomi. She didn't blink. They stepped forward together. Inside, the tests turned brutal. Simulations of urban combat, hostage rescues, weapons jammed under pressure, mazes that tested memory under fatigue. Sleep was a luxury. Food came only if tasks were completed within time limits. The line between reality and training blurred fast. In one room, Naomi had to disassemble and reassemble a rifle submerged in freezing water. In another, she was left alone in darkness with only the sound of footsteps circling her. Caleb struggled. The cracks in his confidence showed. But he didn't quit. He followed Naomi's lead, watched how she moved. How she stayed calm under fire. "You don't miss," he said once between exercises. "You don't flinch." Naomi didn't answer. She didn't need to. On the 5th day, the remaining candidates were brought back to the estate's courtyard. Only 3 remained. Langston stood before them, expression unreadable. "This was never about shooting," he said. "It was about grit. Silence. Control. You've shown that." He walked forward, placed a new insignia. On each of their chests, black metal with a silver eagle in flight. "You are now part of the Shadow Marks program. What you do next will never be public. Never be praised. But it will matter." As the others quietly celebrated, Naomi walked to the edge of the courtyard, the mountain wind tugging at her jacket. Caleb followed. "You're not what I expected," he said, voice lower now, almost respectful. Naomi looked at him, steady and firm. "You weren't the only one who underestimated me." He nodded. No sarcasm. Just truth. As she turned to leave, Langston's voice called out, "Brooks." She paused. "This next part, you'll be leading it." Naomi blinked. "Leading? You heard me. You've earned it." The world shifted in that moment. Not with applause. Not with headlines. But with purpose. Naomi Brooks had started this journey as the girl no one took seriously. Now, she stood at the front of something no one would ever see coming. And the world? It was about to learn her name. Naomi Brooks' journey isn't just about marksmanship. It's about being underestimated, staying grounded in your values, and showing up prepared, even when no one believes in you. It's about walking into rooms where people laugh at your presence, and leaving those rooms having redefined the rules. Naomi never raised her voice. She never fought back with words. She let her skill, her discipline, and her unwavering focus speak for her. The biggest lesson from Naomi's story is this: your worth isn't determined by where you come from, what you wear, or who tries to size you up at a glance. True strength is forged in silence, on quiet mornings when no one is watching, in lonely moments when you're training with no applause, and in all the times you choose integrity over attention. Even after her victory, Naomi didn't gloat. She didn't let the spotlight change her. She stood firm, rooted in the values passed down from her grandfather: patience, precision, and purpose. And when opportunity came knocking, when Major Langston offered her a chance that could change everything, she didn't leap for fame. She paused. She thought. She moved with intention. That's rare. Here's what I hope you take away from her story. Let your work speak before your words do. Preparation matters more than perception. And when the world tells you that you don't belong, show them that you've been ready all along. To those listening today who feel overlooked, uninvited, or dismissed because of where you're from, how you look, or what others assume about you, remember Naomi. Let her story remind you that your moment is coming. Stay ready. Stay humble. And when your time comes, make it undeniable. On behalf of U.S. Justice Stories, thank you for watching, for supporting stories that matter, and for standing with voices that deserve to be heard. We're honored to bring these narratives to light, and we couldn't do it without you. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and tell us in the comments When was the time you proved someone wrong, not with words, but with action? Until next time, keep standing for justice. Keep believing in the quiet fighters. And always remember, the world may overlook you, but your purpose never will.